Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of the Matt Gets It podcast. If this is your first time here, this is a sports debate show discussing the biggest sports topic. I'm your host, Matt Martinez, and with me again today is Billy Ryan.
Yes, sir.
How you doing today, Billy?
Doing well, doing well. Like I said, another weekend, another great week of sports. A lot of interesting things going on in the world.
That's a great word that you just used, interesting, because we have a lot of interesting topics to discuss today. First things first, we're going to start with the NFL and the latest offseason news. So, Billy, our first segment today is titled Hate It or Love It, and shout out to 50 Cent for that. I'm gonna list a few recent moves made this past week, and you're gonna tell me whether you hate the move or you love the move. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right, man. First up, the Cincinnati Bengals lock up their star wide receiving duo of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Chase, a four-time Pro Bowler, was the fifth overall pick in the 2021 draft. The LSU product signed a four-year, $161 million contract extension, which includes $73.9 million guaranteed. As for Higgins, the second-round pick in the 2020 draft out of Clemson, he has signed a four-year, $115 million contract with $30 million guaranteed. Billy, do you hate the move or do you love the move for the Bengals?
I love it. I'm here for it. I think, with Jamar Chase coming in as that front runner, number one receiver, winning the Triple Crown of 2024, 1,700 yards, 17 touchdowns. One of the better seasons that we've seen in the last couple of years. Consistently from these wide receivers. But I want to highlight T. Higgins a little bit more than Jamar Chase. I think, he's a team player. It shows that he wants to be in that franchise, that he wants to kind of stay with the Bengals. I think he could be a wide receiver one with almost any other team and get, top dollar for a lot of those prices kind of coming in. So I think it's going to be a great move for the Bengals, but I do think it is contingent on a couple of kind of items and or players kind of coming in. So I think it really kind of depends on Joe Burrow. He's been dealing with those wrist injuries the last couple of years, and it seems to be affecting him. I know he's missed a handful of games in the last two seasons, and you can just sometimes see he's not himself when he drop backs a pass and he goes to, get a release on that ball. You can see he winces in pains or comes off on the sideline, constantly kind of grabbing his wrist, squeezing his hand, trying to figure out what's going on there. Um, but overall, I also think the running game is going to be a big one. I know Chase Brown came in pretty good. He almost had 1,000 yard season. And I know he was kind of even injured a couple of games and might have even gotten to that number. But they seem to kind of bring in some of these other kind of running backs. Like I know Herbert is on the squad as well. He only got a handful of touches. And I think they just picked up Samaje Perine from the Broncos there as well. So really kind of want to see what the running game would look like, but I do think that just kind of stacks up for Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. But like I said, even then, being such great receivers on the team complements each other. I think, it leaves them to be open with such good, players around where it's hard to cover two guys on the field like that. And then if you can open up with a running game, I think the sky's the limit for the Bengals.
When you're talking about Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, they're without a doubt one of the best tandems in the NFL. They put up great numbers year after year. Chase has recorded four straight seasons with 1,000 yards. And Higgins, he has 2 years or two seasons with over 1,000 yards. And then when you talk about the running game, you know Zach Moss was also in the mix this past year. They bring back P Ryan, like you said, he has
Right.
familiarity with the Bengals. So there is some weapons for Joe Burrow, and from a chemistry standpoint, it is a great move that you're keeping that trio, Burrow, Higgins, and Chase together. Me personally, I hate this move just from a salary cap standpoint because now you're limiting your the rest of your roster and who you can go out and add to this team. And specifically, when you look at the defensive side of the ball, uh, you got the reigning sack leader in Trey Hendrickson, who just had 17 and a half sacks. And now you have no money essentially left to pay him over unless he takes a massive discount and the majority of people already view him as being underpaid for his position, and now the defensive ends are getting these massive contracts recently, Miles Garrett, Max Crosby, and if you can't find money to pay the guy who just registered 17 and a half sacks, three more than Miles Garrett, what are we doing? There's two sides to the ball. It's not just, you know, offense that you need to worry about. You got to have somebody that's going to get after the quarterback on the opposite side, and you got to improve the back end of that defense. You know what I mean? So the Bengals finished 9-8. They just missed the playoffs, winning record, but a lot of those games they were having to, outduel a lot of these offenses. Burrow was having to throw the ball. They were having to always come back. It seemed like they were down a majority of their games. And so if you really want to make sure and capitalize on this window, you got to have a strong defense. And so if you don't start with bringing Trey Henderson back, I mean, he's still on a 1 year. He still has this year, but he wants an extension himself. And are you going to trade him for picks? Are you going to, you know, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. But I hate it just from that standpoint. I like the move at the same time,
See,
but I just think it's now going to them to go, uh, limit them in what they can do in future seasons. Like, because it's now all or nothing with the Bengals in my eyes.
right. Now, and I agree with you. There's a reason why the saying, defense wins championships sticks around. And it seems like that's actually been a consistent problem for the Bengals over the last couple of years. I've watched so many games of the Bengals when they're playing the Chiefs or the Bills, and it's a 45 to 52 game, or it's constantly, consistently high scoring. And they're just missing that defensive component. So I think you're right, but I think we see some of the teams who get away with it for so long, like the Chiefs, where their defense is maybe middle of the road or slightly below that. But the fact that they can go out and consistently score almost every single drive and not punt and reduce field goals, shows that they can win those games. And if they get a good handful of stops, it could be truly the difference in a game. But I think you're right on the money there. But with the money being the topic, I agree. I think it can be a little bit of a touchy subject, but I like the move. I like the move, but considering that salary cap.
I mean, it's hard to let go of premier wide receivers. Like you were saying, Billy, Jamar Chase is a triple crown threat. My apologies. At the wide receiver position, receiving yards, receptions, and touchdowns. I mean, this past season he had 17 touchdowns, a career high. Won every game. So he's a prolific talent, and
Yep.
same for Higgins. I mean, this guy had double-digit touchdowns this past year too. He had 10, also a career high. So, I mean, these guys get open, and Burrow could throw him the ball, and that's even without uh, a premier offensive line. Because there's been a lot of chatter too, like Burrow's having trouble, staying healthy, but that's because he's getting hit fairly often. He's getting pressured a lot. Whether that could be a tight end chipping better or the running back picking up the blitz, but having prolific weapons on the outside just makes your offense that much more dynamic. So I agree, Billy. It was a great move for them to lock them up. It's just now that you have to capitalize on this window, this short window that I think they're going to have.
That's right.
Our next move in the NFL comes from the Houston Texans. The Texans agreed to terms with cornerback Derek Stingley Jr. on a 3-year, $90 million contract, making him the highest paid defensive back in the NFL. Stingley Jr. was the third overall pick in the 2022 draft, also out of LSU. He has started all 37 games he's played in and has recorded 11 interceptions. Billy, do you hate it or love it?
I love it in the fact that they are investing in their defense. They have so many offensive talents within Joe Mixon, C.J. Stroud, Stephon Diggs, all these great offensive stars. Um, it's nice to see the Texas being coming around, being a good team. I haven't seen the Texans be good since the Matt Schaub, Arian Foster kind of days. So it is nice to see. I don't he's still a young talent. That's a lot of money kind of coming into a rookie. So that's where I'm a little bit on the fence. Young talent coming in, I understand you want to lock him down, especially if he is that number one guy for you. I'm a little bit weary in that sense, but I do like them investing in their defense.
And I love this move specifically from uh, a head coaching standpoint. You know, D'Amico Ryan's defensive guy, so he's gonna want to keep his core on defense together for as long as possible and build on that. And with Stingley Jr., you have one of the top ball hawks in the NFL in over the last couple seasons. I mean, this guy had sorry here, I'm looking down at my notes. Sorry, folks. 18 passes defended against this past season, which ranks towards the top. And he also had 4 tackles for loss. So he's not afraid to lower the shoulder and get in there if he's around the line of scrimmage or if he's on a blitz or something like that. So, and the most important thing is the guy plays. He played in 17 games this past season. So it's not like he missed a lot of time. You know, he was out there on the field essentially every play. So, I mean, whether in man or zone coverage, this guy is there making plays.
100%. But like you were saying, you want that kind of guy in your secondary to kind of come in and make some of those critical tackles or make a key one-on-one tackle kind of outside the box. So I think you're right. This is a great move. Stingley is a great player overall. Like I said, him being young is where I only find myself just like a little bit weary. But like you're saying, he's got the stats to back it up, and he's going to be consistently on the field, or at least he was this last year. So I think if he avoids injury, he has the potential to kind of reoccur his season and step up and be that guy as well, and hopefully earn that contract.
Yeah, when you put up a great season as a defensive back, the following year, a lot of teams are going to try to stay away from you because they're like, oh man, is this guy going to replicate that success, And oftentimes, maybe the number one receiver on the opposing team is going to, be on the opposite field of him. You know, Stingley, unless he moves around, consistently and becomes like a Darrell Revis type where he'll line up against anybody on the other side of the field. He has that potential. He probably does so already. I mean, excuse me, does do that already. So at times, depending on what the coverage and the scheme is. So great player. Happy for him to get his money. Massive contract, like we said, the highest paid defensive back in the NFL currently, and well deserved. Next up, Billy, the atmosphere surrounding the PGA Tour and how it's affecting the crowd and the play over on the links. Scotty Scheffler.
Yeah, no, like I.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Nope, nope.
So Scotty Scheffler, the number one ranked golfer in the world and two-time Masters champion, had some interesting remarks pertaining to the current state of PGA and Live. Scheffler was quoted saying, "If the fans are upset, then look at the guys that left. They did what they wanted to do, and I can't control their life. I'm not going to sit here and say they should have done something differently. They made their choice. If we want to figure out why the game of golf is not back together, go ask those guys. Go to wherever they are playing this week and figure out when the game of golf is going to come back together." Those are some interesting remarks, Billy. Your thoughts on Scotty's comments?
No, like you said, this has been one of the more interesting kind of topics upcoming. Um, and I definitely see where Scotty's coming from, but I also like to think of the average golfer or the middle of the pack kind of guy that is not, a Scotty Scheffler. He's typically consistently within the top 10 of golfers, if not number one at most times. Had a great last couple seasons and everything kind of moving through. But you look at the reason why these people left the PGA Tour. They're consistently making more money per tournament going to these other tournaments, and they're playing the same golf courses. You know what I mean? They might be a little bit different in terms of size, and I know the viewership is consistently more towards the PGA. But sometimes money talks, especially when you're the person participating in that, and it's your family's livelihood that's kind of on the matter there. But with that kind of being said, I know the PGA is very, very traditional, and they in when I look at it from all those perspectives, I see why people left. But with my thoughts there as well, you have the Masters, you have the Waste Management Open, you have the backing to carry these such large numbers. Where it is weird that it is divided, where you don't get to see maybe the top of the top competing in every single tournament. Um, so like I said, I understand where Scotty's coming from there. But ultimately, I agree and lean towards people that left for to play live golf. If it's you and your money and your family, you're going to make that decision.
And there have been several golfers who have been vocal about that decision, and you know, Brooks Koepka flat out said I went to live for the money. That's life changing money. If he was on record saying if God forbid if anything happened to him, his family would be taken care of because of that wealth that he just accumulated from moving over to live. And I think another reason that a majority of these players did decide to move to live, Billy, and it should not be dismissed, is because, like you were saying, those average or middle of the pack golfers who struggle to consistently make the cut on the PGA Tour, there's no cut over on live. It's a set field, and it's just you got to play your best for those 3 rounds of golf, 54 holes, as opposed to 72. The cut days after the second day on PGA Tour, 36 holes. So, you know, these guys who don't make the cut and travel to all these tournaments, logistically speaking and financially speaking, it's a stress for them. So why wouldn't they take the option that's not as grueling on them in terms of grinding out week after week to make the cut? They don't have to worry about getting cut.
Yeah, and I think you hit it exactly on that. Like I couldn't imagine being coming out of the pocket, spending spending thousands of dollars coming out to come do all this stuff. So I think you hit right on the head.
I also think a reason why you're seeing more of these recent comments from some of these guys on the PGA Tour when asked about like, oh, are these live guys going to come back or what's the deal, is because of these international events, specifically the Ryder Cup and the United States' recent performance in the last one. They got, if we're being frank here, they got dismantled by the Europeans easily. I mean, it wasn't really close, and a lot of people felt that some of the guys selected for the USA team weren't better than some of the guys that left to live. And specifically, they're referring to uh, Bryson DeChambeau. Koepka was on the team, uh, but I think really that's why a lot of these questions and discussions are happening now, is because they are worried about losing the next Ryder Cup again and it not being close.
No, I think it's very true, and it's a great point.
Hitting it on the head, folks. All right, Billy, moving on. We got the MLB opening day is upon us. It's nearly here. It's on Thursday, March 27th. We did have the Tokyo series, which took place this past Tuesday and Wednesday with the Cubs and the Dodgers, but opening day for the remainder of the MLB teams begins Thursday. With that being said, Billy, what are your way too early predictions for the Cy Young in both divisions, the AL and the NL?
Perfect. For me, I have two standouts that are number one, that are going to be kind of just heading off for me. So on the NL side, I got Paul Skeens. I think he's just kind of that young up and coming talent, and I think he showed himself over last year. Making that All Star team, and being the youngest person to probably ever do so.
Starting.
But also with go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying that he started the game.
True. Yeah, number one, you starter. But also with that on the AL side, I also have another young talent for the Detroit Tigers, Tariq Skubal. I think he's also one of those young kid who comes out, carries himself well. He's got that swagger up on the mound, and also just being that southpaw. It's a beautiful thing to see. I think me and you kind of growing up in baseball. We haven't seen maybe one of those up and coming lefty pitchers since Kershaw to come in with some nasty stuff. So that's something I'm really kind of excited about. I'd love to hear your kind of pick on that on the NLAL Cy Young thoughts.
So for the AL, I think I agree with you. I think Scooble is the clear front runner again. This dude's stuff is electric, but at the same time in the AL, I also think there's a few people that are sleepers. Um, Even though I don't like the team, the Astros, I think Framber Valdez is one of the best pitchers in the game. And we're talking about again, this dude's a southpaw, and his stuff is electric. This guy has pitched in some big games over the course of his career this far, and he doesn't shy away from it. I think he is definitely a candidate for the AL Cy Young. And then I also think because of the rotation currently and how he's going to have to maybe step into a larger role than initially he was brought into, is going to be Max Fried for the Yankees with Cole going down. Even though Rodon slid into uh, the number one spot for opening day, it's more so because of how it was. The rest days in spring training were already laid out, so Fried would have more than likely been the opening day starter for the Yankees. But because of the way his schedule was, they're like, oh, we'll just slide Rodon up to one, and then Fried will slide into two. But I think Fried is going to have a great year in New York. This guy, ground ball pitcher, uh, Yankees shored up their defense maybe in some people's eyes with Goldschmidt at first base. I'm a first baseman. I love Goldschmidt, one of my favorite players of all time. So I think it was a great move. So maybe I'm biased there, but he's a Gold Glover, so I think he's gonna make a lot of plays over at first base. Volpe, up and comer, Gold Glove winner himself, candidate. So he's up the middle. They got Jazz probably gonna play second now, rather than playing third. So I think uh, as long as Fried keeps the ball inside the ballpark, easier said than done at Yankee Stadium specifically, he's going to be one of the top pitchers in the AL. And then moving over to the NL, Skeens definitely has the potential to win it this year, building off of what he did his rookie year. And then, interesting enough, I think the Dodgers have a few Cy Young candidates. They got Yamamoto, who's going to probably be more comfortable this year, settle down a lot more. Uh, and then Blake Snell's coming over. He's has a Cy Young to himself already. So, and that Southpaw again, in that Dodger bullpen. I mean, starting rotation, excuse me. And then we can't forget Chris Sale for the Braves. You know, Another lefty. I mean, you look at that arm slot that he throws from. It's hard to hit this guy. It's hard to see what he's throwing. Is it a fastball? Slider? That arm slot. Maybe would you say Randy Johnson esque? Right? That arm slot.
Damn near,
Maybe
damn
not
near.
as to the side, but it's hard to see that ball, man. Even from just watching it on TV, so I can only imagine what it's like in the box, or even catching for the guy. So I think there's a few guys that are potentially you know worthy of winning the Cy Youngs. It just depends on health, really.
No, I agree. I think Chris Sale is somebody who I had kind of on my sleepers list there. It seems like, he's somebody I always used to put a lot of faith in. He had a great, career early on in Boston, dealt with a lot of injuries and wasn't himself for 3 to 4 years, bouncing around from ball club to ball club, trying to kind of figure out his way there. But the fact that he, over the last 2 years consistently has come out and been, a Cy Young contender and slinging. But, it also helps to be on the Braves with a great organization who's, consistently putting up runs. So pitching with the lead is going to be huge for him. But you're right. I think Chris Sale is going to be one of those guys. And I have another one of those people on my list who, typical Cy Young front runner in the past in Jacob deGrom. He's coming back, going to be healthy with the Rangers, and I think he kind of falls under that category as well of somebody who's going to be with a consistent ball club putting up runs. I know the Rangers have been making good playoff runs over the last 2 to 3 years now with a World Series title under that belt in those last 2 to 3 years. So there's somebody who I could kind of, or he's somebody I could see coming out being that number one day one starter if he stays healthy. But it all kind of depends. We've seen him how good he was with the Mets, having that .99 ERA and having a 500 record, and all of those games are one-run games or 1-0 games, and it's like, if we had any support for this guy, he could have been something great, and or statistically stat wise. So that's also me being a Mets fan and being probably a little bit biased.
I was
So
gonna say, Billy,
yeah, like I said, there's a couple guys there.
the Mets did DeGrom no favors. I'm sorry. I know you're a Mets fan, but I mean the guy. I don't know how many one-run ball games this guy threw, and they just could not get him any run support. It was frustrating. I'm not even a Mets fan. I'm a Yankees fan. So, but like when you appreciate somebody who's pitching at that level, and you're just like, how is this guy not winning 20 games a year? You know what I mean? Like he is too elite of a talent. Like when you think back, like Arrieta, right? Arrieta was dominating, but his team helped him out, right? And it's like, wow. I mean, Degrom is a great pick, Billy. I That is a great sleeper pick. Since we're talking about maybe older pitchers, that have dealt with injuries and are bouncing around a bit. Maybe what are your thoughts on Scherzer with Toronto?
See, that's a person where I feel like he is potentially damaged goods, but I do feel like he's got the heart and a little bit left in the tank. But it comes down to if his body's going to hold up. He's been in the MLB for a long time. I think this is his probably fourth or fifth organization that he's been with. Bounce around, after he left the Nationals with the Mets, back to the Rangers. I almost put him in the same terms of Verlander, when he's healthy, he's, a good dominating force, but that's a big if, right? So don't get me wrong, I like Scherzer. I love the energy he brings. He's kind of that era of pitchers like Madison Bumgarner that just, didn't deal with a whole lot of shit. And I think that's something that I miss in the MLB.
I agree there, Billy. Yep. Yeah, we we miss those types of pitchers in the MLB. Someone who doesn't put up with the theatrics. Some of these bat flips. At times, and I'm all for players' celebration and players being themselves. You know what I mean? But I mean, you see some of these bat flips, and you're like, dude, how do you not take a 99 fastball to the ribs or next at bat? You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of crazy. Like, but uh, interesting to see what's going to happen on the MLB side of things. Again, folks, we got opening day for MLB coming up on March 27th. Moving on, we got the NBA to talk about. And as the regular season dwindles down, the playoff push continues to intensify. Multiple teams are jockeying for playoff position, but it appears the top seeds in each respective conference are locked up. We got the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are currently leading the Eastern Conference by 5 games over the Boston Celtics, and over in the West, we got the Oklahoma City Thunder, excuse me, who are up 12.5 games on the Houston Rockets. Billy, the question is, which number one seed do you have more faith in moving forward?
For me, I kind of have a definitive one here, though I do think it is very, very close. I reside on the Oklahoma City Thunder. They're one of the top NBA teams consistently on the offensive side of the ball, but they are the number one team on the defensive side of the ball. But in my opinion, um, that stands out in my mind where you can come in, be a good offensive team, but you're only letting up damn near 105 to 107 points a game. I also just like the way the consistency team flows a little bit better. They're that young ball club. They got Chet. They got some of these other young talents that are coming in, and they all play that similar style of ball where they can kind of come in and be cohesive. Don't get me wrong, Donovan Mitchell on the Cleveland Cavaliers. stud, having a great season. But when we look at Shai Gilgeous, he's putting up damn near almost 40 points a game over the last 15 to 20 games, and getting right around that 5 to 6 rebounds, 5 to 6 assists. But he's also shooting 95% from the free throw line, where if he's driving in, he's getting buckets and getting fouled. He's just consistently a threat on the floor. So that's just kind of something I look at when I think of the Thunder.
Yeah, the Thunder are currently 58-12 and on a 5-game winning streak. As for the Cleveland Cavaliers, they are 56-14 and in the midst of a 4-game losing streak. Uh, I'm gonna go the other way, Billy. I have more faith in Cleveland, uh, just because I think the East is a little bit weaker of a conference overall. You know, with OKC, there's potential that they might play Minnesota, they might play Golden State, they might play the Clippers. Those are all teams with experience, playoff experience. When you look at their roster and some of their head coaches, so I think OKC, they're a great team defensively, like you were saying. They got multiple players that are studs defensively. Lou Dort, who could guard essentially 1 through 4. A little bit small. I mean, probably not to say that he couldn't guard some centers in the NBA, but he doesn't have to when you have Hartenstein and Holmgren, there in the front court. And Holmgren is coming back. He's played less than 30 games, So for them to do what they've done without Chet, and then to add him back into the mix, they're going to be a dangerous team for sure. But I just think potentially seeding wise, they might get a tough draw in the first round. In that 8th seed, they could get any of those teams that I just listed. And then when you look at Cleveland, uh, the teams that are currently in the play-in, they're not very imposing at all. You got Chicago, Miami, Atlanta, and the Magic. None of those teams really probably strike fear in Cleveland's heart. And that is me being straight up as a Heat fan. Currently, with how they're playing and what's going on, I just don't know if they have what have it in them to make another miraculous run as an 8th seed, and that's even if they get into the playoffs as the 8th seed. They're currently the 10th seed right now. They would have to win 2 games with the play-in. But I think just from that standpoint, I have more faith in OKC. Donovan Mitchell is doing a great job there. Darius Garland's balling out. Evan Mobley's stepping up and has emerged as a reliable two-way
Consistent.
player for them. And then they got Jarrett Allen, Max Strus. And then off the bench, Ty Jerome. They traded for DeAndre Hunter. But that's not to say OKC is not great either. Like we said, they got a great bench. They got some vets. They got Alex Caruso, who was not too long ago an all defensive member 2 seasons ago. I mean, he's a great on ball defender, terrific help side defender, and they got him coming off the bench, only playing less than 25 minutes a game, playing half the game.
Man, I definitely see that side, and I think it's just where I kind of lean is, I look at the conferences. The Celtics have had great runs over the last 2 or 3 years with a couple world titles in between, and I think we talked about it early on in one of our podcasts with the Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown kind of dynamic, where that's going to be a tough one to beat. And they're going to have to come out, and it's going to probably go to 6 or 7 games. When I look at the Western Conference, I look at the Nuggets, the Rockets. They all have been doing good, but none of them have been doing great. They've all been a little bit hit or miss. Jokic, obviously being one of the best players in the NBA, can come out and lead that team. But sometimes when MPJ and or everyone's just a little off, it makes for a tough run. And when Jamal Murray's not being Jamal Murray's hitting crazy run around jump shots and or getting to the rim, it's a difficult game when they're used to running that 1-2 game down in Denver. And I could say the same thing about the Lakers. Like, don't get me wrong, LeBron and Luka have been kind of tearing it up since they've gotten the league, but you're only 2 guys on that squad, and every other team in the NBA is running that great 1 to 2 man game.
Yeah, those are great points. I mean, the Thunder have great depth. They got they had 2 All Stars this year. They had Shea Gilgis Alexander, and then they had Jalen Williams. who's another, athletic, lanky guy out there on the wing that's can handle the ball, could score, could do all these things. You got willing defenders, and then where OKC thrives is their positional length. I mean, Chet Holmgren is 7 foot himself, and his wingspan is ridiculous. I mean, this guy, even though he's not big in frame, this guy is consistently altering and blocking shots. And if he was healthy, a lot of people view him as a defensive player of the year candidate. So it will be tough for any team that draws Oklahoma City in the first round, Billy. Uh, and even if they, the more they advance in the playoffs, the second round, conference finals if they get there. But uh, so you're just do you think the tandem in potentially the two-man game in the East is more difficult to overcome for the Cavs as opposed for the Thunder facing a two-man tandem in the West?
I do. Like I think obviously the Lakers and the Nuggets are going to be the top contenders for that in the West, but I feel like I'm seeing it more on the East at this point in time.
Gotcha. Keeping it basketball related, we're going to talk about the current madness that is going on in the month of March with the NCAA tournament. Uh, a majority of the games for the round of 62 are complete, and the remaining will conclude later today, which means we are one step closer, Billy, to the Sweet 16. Uh, I know you filled out a bracket. I filled out a bracket. You know, there's still some games going on currently, but how is your bracket looking, Billy? Specifically, your Sweet 16 picks.
I would say my bracket is actually not looking too bad this year. I had Michigan and Texas A&M in my brackets, or yeah, Michigan and Texas A&M in my bracket there, so I was looking pretty good. Um, I did have North Carolina. I was kind of rolling with the hype train from coming behind, and they got kind of edged out there by Ole Miss, who was the higher seed. Um, but yeah, unfortunately, I rode the train.
I think currently the biggest shock of the tournament thus far is St. John's losing. I, I, there was a lot of people that felt St. John's could win the tournament, and I know for one of the groups that I entered in for a bracket, a good amount of people had St. John's. So I think that's the biggest shock so far. For my Sweet 16 picks, like I said, I had St. John's in the Sweet 16. I also had Memphis, Clemson, and Wisconsin. So I didn't do very well on those 5-12 matchups. Those are always tough. Um, Billy, who do you have as your national champ?
So me for I had a tough kind of decision here. My overall winner I have is Tennessee. I have them beating Auburn 70-73 in the final there, but I do have Houston and in Florida in my Final Four there. And I am checking right now, and as I'm looking, it is a close game coming into the end of the game between Florida and UConn, which I have seen. There is never really a whole lot of good luck when you have those four number one seeds going into the Sweet 16. Something always crazy happens there. So that current score there is 61-58. 3 minutes left in the quarter.
Well, appreciate the score update there, Billy. We'll have to wait and see how the rest of the games turn out. It's always exciting, Sweet 16. A lot of people say that's not until the tournament officially starts, until they get to the Sweet 16. So uh, I picked Auburn. Hopefully they pull it out. I think they have a really great chance. Well, folks, that's all we have for today. This is another edition of the Matt Gets a Podcast. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins locked up for the foreseeable future there in Cincinnati. The Texans also lock up their cornerback Derek Stingley Jr. Scottie Scheffler had some interesting remarks on the PGA Tour and Live deal. The Cleveland Cavaliers and Oklahoma City Thunder currently occupy the top seeds in each respective conference. Will it hold up? Stay tuned for that. The playoffs are just a few weeks away. And then over in the MLB, Tariq Skubal, Paul Skeens favorites, early favorites for the Cy Youngs in each the AL and the NL respectively. Let us know what your comments and thoughts are. Make sure to add us on social media. Billy, where can they find you?
And you can find me at Billy the Thrill on Instagram and at
And you can
Thrilly
find
the
me on
Bill
X
on
at Matt
X.
MTZ108. If it's your first time here, we appreciate you tuning in. Make sure to subscribe, turn on that notification bell for alerts. That's Billy Ryan. I'm Matt Martinez. This is the Matt Gets It podcast.
Thanks, everybody.